God, politics, and sports. Three areas people say you should try to avoid. But here we are. I'm Bill Smith, and I look forward to talking to you about faith, politics, and sports. What's up, everybody? This is Bill Smith, as you already know, because it's my show, right? So you ought to know who it is. With God, politics, and sports. And wow, we've had another great weekend. A lot of things going on, some things not as good as others, some things that we were going to touch on and get into and begin to understand and just talk about, just to talk. Nobody trying to get, I don't know about getting famous, infamous, but we do want to talk about some things. So there's a lot of interesting things to cover and address. So let's just get straight into it. No delays. This segment of GPS is being brought to you by our sponsor, Q Craft Sausage. You can text 706-409-3532, or you can order online at qcraftsausage.square.site. This is some of the best sausage I ever tasted. And I'm going to throw something in there real quick. I want you, and I apologize for not getting this information, but also, is it sourdough? This bread is slamming. And I know in the past, you've probably seen me eating 3 pieces at a time on Instagram. But that sourdough bread mixed with that sausage or a sandwich with that, I'm going to tell y'all something. It's something to fight for. And I love talking about this because this couple is Marquez, and he's the one who does the Q Craft Sausage. And his wife, Deandra, she is the one who does the Is It Sourdough. And last show, I talked about casting out your nets. And I've seen these young people grow. I've seen how their lives have been changed. And I see that they cast out their nets. It's not just, they do many things, but they're also faithful. They're faithful not just to one another, they're faithful to our ministry, to the ministry that they're part of, which is Joy Center. They're faithful to where they serve, whether it's in dance, whether it's in security. They're faithful. So I know that God is going to bless their business mightily. And I've already seen this young man just grow, business grow, and getting orders. And I stalk his wife. For my wife to talk about somebody else's food, it better be good. So somebody else is making. So is it sourdough? And also Q Craft Sausage. So go on there to qcraftsausage.square.site. Order you some sausage. You can look up Is It Sourdough on Instagram. And once again, I do apologize for not having more information on that before I started talking about it, but it just came to me just now. I was just gonna focus on one thing, and I end up talking 2.5 minutes about these folks and their business and what they're doing. So I want to see this, and because we're being listened to from around the world now, so you guys that are on Spotify, all the other different streaming platforms, qcraftsausage.square.site. I want to see orders coming from Asia, Africa, Europe, all over the place. And then look up that Is It Sourdough. And I want to see folks getting bread from all around the world. All right, let's get into this thing. God tells us to pray for those that have authority over you. And one thing I looked and I was studying the word, and I was looking over in Job 42:10. And one of the things that jumped out to me, and I wasn't even really paying attention to it. It just really, God just dropped it like, look at this. Job's blessing came when he prayed for those friends of his that were even bad-mouthed him. That's when his restoration came. So when God is telling us to pray for those that have authority over you as a nation, we've been failing to do this. And listen, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care if you call yourself Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. God tells for us to pray for those that have authority over us. And 1 Timothy 2:1-4, you don't see anything in there where God tells us you have to like the person. But he's telling us to pray for our leaders. He didn't say you have to like them. You don't have to like President Trump. You didn't have to like Obama, you didn't have to like any of the presidents, Reagan, any of them. But God has said, pray for them. And I can remember praying for President Biden, and I wasn't a big fan of his at all during those 4 years. But I understood one thing. God placed him there for a reason. We may not always like it, but it's God's purpose that will prevail. Whatever it was, we had to go through as a nation to see what to God get us back to where he wants us to be at. And so I said, I need to pray for him. And like I said, Job 42:10 says, and the Lord restored Job's losses when he prayed for his friends. Indeed, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. That is Job 42:10. So in our obedience comes deliverance and renewal. And we have got to stop with the rhetoric that's going on, and we're not speaking words of life. Remember that the power of life and death, Proverbs 18:21, I believe. The power of death and life. Let's get that straight. It says death and life are in the tongue, and how powerful your tongue is, and how powerful our tongue is as we're praying. The effectual fervent righteous, the prayers of an effective fervent righteous man availeth much. And we need to get back to doing that. Once again, you don't have to like the person. I will say this. I know that there are people who have prayed for me, that probably praying for me right now, that can't stand me and may not like me, which doesn't bother me any, because my thing is, you're not on my checking account, you're not on my savings account, so I'm not sweating you any. That's just me. Not everybody's going to like everything you do. Not everybody's going to like everything you say. And there are people that I pray for that I know I don't like. But I pray for them because that's what the word of God says. It doesn't say you have to like anybody, but it says you got to love them with the love of the Lord. You don't have to like them. And y'all like Costa Rica. My wife and I went there a couple years ago. Awesome time. Costa Rica's the bomb. We need to go back. But anyway, we have got to stop speaking words of disdain and discourse. And we need to start praying for one another. We need to start praying and uplifting one another as a nation. A kingdom divided will surely fall. This isn't, I don't care who you are, what you believe. This is the greatest nation on the planet. People are not trying to sneak into Canada. No. People don't try to sneak into Mexico. No. People are not trying to sneak into Japan. Well, they ain't gonna let you in. Man, you get thrown right up in the Pacific. They ain't playing. The bottom line is this. People lose their mind and even so much their lives trying to get into the U.S. illegally instead of going the right way about doing it. That's how great this country is. And for those that before you get into that with biblical sense, with receiving those that are immigrants, etc., one of the things it tells us in the word, and you can look it up in Genesis, and actually in Exodus also, it tells us they are to adhere themselves and change themselves. In other words, they don't bring in their false gods. That's what God told Moses. So they are to placate and change themselves to how we believe. So we should not be jumping through the hoops to change what we believe and the standards that we have. And with standards that were set in this nation to fit everybody else's to make them comfortable. We don't change our laws to Sharia law to make somebody feel comfortable. It doesn't work like that. I'm going to keep it 100. I always say it. I'm going to keep it 100. Look in your word. The children of Israel did not change anything that they were doing, because when they did, they fell they fell away from God, and they fell into accursed things when they started worshiping false gods and idols that other people may have brought in. And then they had to come back to God. And then you look at it time and again, they had to come back to God through judges. You see it through kings. You see it in crown. You see it over and over again, where when they fell away from the things of God to follow what others were doing, they had to go through a time period of pain, blues, and agonies. And I pray that our nation, even in this tough time period that we're in right now, that these words of disdain and discourse, these words of death would often lead to violence has got to cease. We cannot have people going on TV, and once again, whether it's a politician, a comedian, wannabe comedian who's not funny, Jimmy Kimmel, or someone who may be more conservative, whatever it might be, we cannot have the continued rhetoric that produces violence, because with that violence, it begets death. And the ones that are being targeted aren't even the ones that are dying. It's the innocent people. It's innocent people, people whose minds may be so polluted in the things that are going on, someone who's caught in the crossfire of things going on. Butler, it was a fireman protecting his wife and family. He had nothing to do with the president. He was just there. Recently at the White House, the dinner that went on the White House Correspondents Association, he didn't die, but a Secret Service agent, which we understand being in law enforcement, but he was shot. And thank God, praise God, that for protective armor and body armor that was developed over decades, protected him from serious injury whatsoever. But they weren't even the targets. But innocents are getting caught up in targets. And this is not just in our country. You go worldwide around, when someone goes after somebody else, it's usually innocent people who are getting hurt or killed because of rhetoric. And cowards. Cowards attacking people because they don't like what they may be saying politically. If it's a war, it's a war. There's a big difference. There's a huge difference. If we're going to war, then we're at war. Period. But if we're not at war, if you're not on a battlefield, what are we doing? Why are we speaking such words that bring us such discourse? And the keyboard warriors, are sad and pathetic in many ways. See, these very attacks that are spewed are unbiblical, and it feeds those that want to kill and destroy. But also those keyboard warriors that get on and celebrate these things, these pathetic, terrible individuals. Oh, they missed. Oh, they can't get this right. When's somebody else going to try again? I'm going to say, and the ones that need to hear this aren't the ones who are going to listen to a podcast like this. You're pathetic, you're sad, and you're disgusting. Period. You don't have to like anybody, but you don't wish for somebody's death. You don't wish for your leader's death. We're not talking about a foreign leader that's against our country, that's trying to bring pain, blues, and agony and death to our country. And we say this person needs to get eliminated because they're attacking our country. That is warfare. You go after them. Period. But you don't wish for death. In a democracy, you don't wish for death of your leaders. I don't see people getting on and attacking Jeffries and hoping he dies and hoping Schumer dies or hoping AOC dies. I haven't seen that, and I do look for those things. But my God, how often do we see on things like Threads or the more liberal sides, when is he going to die? When is they going to do this? Why? What kind of stupidity could you be birthed with to want to live? And I will tell you this. If you're pro-abortion, you're pro-death, and it shows in your mentality as it goes along in other areas. I'm not asking anybody to agree with me. God, politics, and sports with Bill Smith. I've always said to you, I will keep it 100 in front of you. And I want your comments. You don't agree with me, please put your comments in there. Put your comments in the box so I know. So when I go back through and I'm reviewing the show and I can say, wow, okay. And I'll answer you. I will reply back to you. Not in a mean, nasty way, but I'll share with you Because until we stop doing this with the red, and it's not, once again, it's targeted words. And when we start saying eliminate, destroy, those kind of things. Now, we want to eliminate a policy. That's a policy. We need to eliminate the people that are, no, how about we need to vote out? There's a big difference, because eliminating somebody means they're done. Voting them out means you got in the voter booth and you pressed through what you wanted to press through, and people voted things out. I don't agree with what they voted for in Virginia as far as when it comes to the districting, excuse me. But it was voted on. And if it gets struck down by a court, Supreme Court, whatever it might be, that's our process. That's our due process that we have. That's our due process. You have legislative, executive, judicial branches. All three watch each other and monitor each other. They're all checks and balances. 3 checks and balances. Legislative, judicial, and executive. Look it up. This is the kind of stuff kids need to learn more about in school, instead of just saying, hey, go out there and protest this, and they have no idea what they're protesting because they don't know what a real protest is and why you're protesting. Because no one's taught them the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. They don't know how they're all checks and balances. So you have legislative, executive, judicial. They all check and balance each other. That's where you get our laws from, signed off on, approved by. Do they fit the Constitution? It's all 3 checks and balances. And there are 3 powerful areas that we need to really know. But with the immediate, this White House Correspondents Association dinner, the attacker, he was an educated but disturbed man. Looking at him, he was black. Stop with all the what he's mixed with this, he's mixed with that, he's mixed. We have got to stop putting narratives on it when it doesn't fit what we want to believe as black people. Because if he was Asian, if he was Iranian, if he has Iranian folks, really been losing their mind. But if it was anything of that nature, people want that stamp put on them. But why, whether you're black or white, why we try to sugarcoat things when it comes to black folks? And then first thing we want to cry is racism. Dude was black. You can look at his picture sitting there. First thing I said to my very white wife, who some people, my brother passed away, God bless, miss him so much. Charles Newman used to always say that my wife was the black one and I was the white one. It was funny. But anyway, I looked right at him and said, okay, he's black. Now, once you get that out of the way, now let's focus on the fact that how stupid he was and what he was attempting to do and how dumb it was. But if he was white, that'd be the first thing they would say. White male. They've done it all the time. But nobody said black male because the political correctness is terrible. Let's call it what it is. Call whoever the person is what they are, their ethnicity. Let's call it and keep moving. Because I'll tell you this much. The act starts to become more important when we remove the race mentality out of it. In other words, I'm saying is you identify it. Now let's get on to what is really important. But when we don't identify it and we don't jump at it immediately, then people start to try to figure it out, and then they try to sugarcoat things. There's nothing to sugarcoat. He was black, and you say, well, he was mixed. His birth certificate, unless his parents said otherwise, says black. All my children, birth certificates say black. That's it. White mom, black dad, black children. They all understand their full ethnicity, but that's what it says in their birth certificates. So let's just identify that right from the beginning. But as Manifiesto gives the fact he wanted to attack the Trump administration and its members. And part of the crux of his anger was built on the falsity. And I say falsity because it was never proven out. And quite the opposite, that the president of the United States is a rapist, pedophile, and other things that have been proven false. People still, this is what I cracks me up. You will say, well, he's a this, he's a that, he's a this. And when somebody says, well, go ahead and prove it. Well, you know he is because His name was in the Epstein file. So was Whoopi Goldberg. So were many other Democrats. President Clinton was drug over to testify. Him and former Secretary Hillary Clinton had to testify to it. But I don't hear anybody calling them these names. And then they want to say, well, there was, Obama didn't have any of this or any of that. That's a lie too. That's a lie too. There were scandals in his White House as well. But the big difference between the two of them was the media. He was a media darling, and then the race card would be played. But there were scandals as well. They can be proven. So it's just simple Google. Benghazi, that was a scandal. Just simple things, little simple things. Okay. Now, also this thing, and I do want to refute some things I hear conservatives say often. No, nobody put billions of dollars on a ship and sent it over to Iran. The lifting, so let's get it straight. The lifting on a lot of the embargoes, a lot of the financial things that were lifted, released billions of dollars. That in turn, they did not use that money for what they said for infrastructure, et cetera. They did use that money. So no, we did not ship that money over in that manner, but it was because of the lifting of embargoes and financial things that was upon them. It did open up that opportunity. So it was not directly shipped over like you see, but the policies that were adopted for that nuclear proliferation agreement and pact that came, they took advantage of President Obama. And I'm glad that President Trump did come across and he did wipe that thing out, because it's proven that what they did, look at their weaponry, to even stand up to this, even though it's falling apart, to stand up this long to what we were doing, shoot back, etc. And they were in the process of developing a nuclear weapon and missiles that could reach out. But anyway, with that said, the immediate heartless and ignorant talk of it all being a setup and orchestrated is sick. I've seen some folks that I consider pretty intelligent, and most of the time they say highly intelligent things. I can't believe they would say something so highly unintelligent. And like I stated in the beginning, that's like going when people say, well, football's all set up and the games are rigged. You're going to tell me you're going to have people who put their life on the line like that and please don't anybody say, well, wrestling's not fake. Okay. Wrestling is very structured. You can't fall off of something that fall that far down, and consider it being fake. All right. It's structured. It could be choreographed. It is written out, etc. But please don't tell me it's fake. That stuff hurts. Tell somebody to slap you in your chest as hard as they can and see how fake that feels. Anyway, not to defend wrestling because it makes billions of dollars on its own. Doesn't need my defense. But I'm just really amazed with the amount of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, that people ignore that there were lives that were tragically lost during these incidents. Once again, like I said, the father in Pennsylvania, the Secret Service agent who was shot in Washington, D.C., those that have to go through court cases because of such actions by people. These things affect lives, and nobody is trying to set this up. Oh, he did this, so he doesn't. So as a distraction, What kind of garbage would you want? Because I would say this, and now this is just common sense. If it was a distraction, I'm sorry, not a distraction. If it was designed to be a distraction, don't you think that somebody who is associated with it will come out with it because they will make billions of dollars with their story? Don't you think it would change the complete political atmosphere in this country? And I really think it's appalling that our intelligence would be challenged like that. And then for people to sit there and listen to it. Folks, you're sitting there listening to it. Why? Why would you sit there and listen to it? It doesn't make any sense. Why sit there and listen to it? But we got to be careful the words that we're speaking because they produce death and life. And I know I started that in the beginning, but I'm right back to it again. And like I said, just for people to try to say, even with sports, I've seen people say, man, look at that. That score this. Oh, no, that's set up. Oh, football this and hockey that. All these other things. The fix is on. Nah, and you have people who try to fix stuff, but they end up going to jail. You don't believe me? Look at the news now. Guys that were in the NFL and NBA going to jail. The Texas A&M quarterback, I can't remember his name, excuse me for that. He's under investigation for gambling. Those things they're not fake. They're going to catch you. And that's one of the things we really stress to with our young people when it comes to sports, to be honest with it. And that's why I love having Spartans Youth Football as one of our great sponsors of God, Politics, and Sports. And we encourage you to put your young ones in youth sports or any extracurricular activity. And I really stress putting them in youth sports. And I'm going to spend a few moments on that, not because I've been involved in youth sports for over 30 years as far as a builder, mentor, coach, etc. Because I started playing in 1975. That's like 51 years ago. That's the first time I got into a youth sport, and that was youth wrestling, Green Tree Wrestling, Coach Ray Jasper. And I shared once before, I was the first black dude on the team, first black kid on that team, as well as in high school with Morristown High School, the first black wrestler, a varsity wrestler, actually wrestler period, I believe, but definitely varsity wrestler. But anyway, and I do hold those things highly up, and I do praise God that I was a first, because that first opened the door for many others to go into great success in fields that they're going even outside of that sports realm. And I may have been one of the first ones for Fleetwood football too, but I'm not sure. But I have to check on that one. I'm going to have to look back on that one. I'm going to have to look, but we may have rolled up in there. We rolled up in there as a group with that. But get your children involved in extracurricular activities. Just don't bog them down into one sport. Parents, stop all this. I want my kid to specialize in baseball, football, wrestling, soccer, hockey, tennis, and that's the only thing they do their whole life from the time. One, they don't use all the necessary muscles to continue to grow as an athlete. They get locked down, and then two, they'll start to wear those muscles out. If a kid starts pitching when he's 9 and 10, and that's all he does is pitch from 1 January to December 31st, you're not going to have a kid with an arm by the time he gets into high school. Because throwing a baseball is different than throwing a football. It's the difference, okay? There's a difference with it. With muscles, the muscles you use in wrestling, you use in football, but all the muscles you use in football, you don't use in wrestling. With swimming, oh my gracious, swimming, you use your earlobe muscles, you use every muscle. The two sports, from my understanding, that you use just about every muscle in your body is football and wrestling. Wrestling and swimming. But with swimming, get them in swimming. Build up their lung capacity. Some of the people I knew growing up that played football that were swimmers, oh my God, they just never got tired. Never got tired. And some tough kids. Whether it's soccer, I'm not always, and I joke around with my grandson playing soccer, and I always say, hey, that's not in his gene pool. But I understand one thing. There's some terrific athletes. And we over the years, we've gotten kids that come from soccer to play football, and they're terrific athletes. They really are great feet. But they would never know that if their parents said you could only play this. And that's why I joke around with if my grandson played soccer for the next 3 or 4 years, that's fine. Or if you play, and I know some people, they're soccer all spring, football all fall. Go for it. I love that. That makes that kid a better athlete, male or female. They will be a better athlete. Girls flag football, basketball. We have some that are doing 2 or 3 sports on a Saturday because they're learning and growing as athletes. So parents, please stop putting your kids in a box, because first thing is, nobody's kid out there is walking around and as the next Bryce Harper. Okay? Let your kid be the first one, whoever you named your child. Let them be that first one, because you look at the amount of people that actually make it to the pros, the percentage is low, but they can still be professionals in different areas. They can be professionals as far as in law enforcement, military, teacher, doctors, lawyers. They can be professionals in the music industry. They're still professionals, but they learned it on the sports field. They learn it on that field, or other extracurricular activities. Acting. If they're in the robotics, whatever is extracurricular, get them out of the house, get them out of the room, and get them involved. Watch how you develop your children and how great they become. And I love this part because as we move into talking about the NFL draft, it was awesome. It was really good. I thought that the Jets did a tremendous job. And I really believe that the Jets graded out pretty well. Now, I will say this, and I'm usually not a big fan of grading out the draft and looking at how people graded out the draft, because to me, you can't grade the draft at least for 3 years. So because of the change, you will not know the impact of this draft for 3 years. Even if somebody comes out and they're stellar this year, it's football. 2-3 years from now, will that person still be at the same level that they are? The Patriots may say 20 plus years ago they didn't have a great draft, but they grabbed a dude in the 6th round who turned out to be the GOAT. And it took me a while to get off of Joe Montana for that. But I had to give, when Brady went to Tampa Bay and kept winning, I had to give it to him, because Joe Montana didn't do that. He didn't go to KC and keep winning. Not Super Bowls anyway. But the Jets graded out as a B+. The Giants graded out as a B+. The Saints, they all graded out as B+. So I didn't see any teams that really, they just said, okay, you just had an absolutely lousy draft. Most of them, they said that they did pretty good, and they addressed those areas that they really needed to address. The Raiders graded out as an A. Overall, they graded out as an A, A-. But the one thing the Raiders do have to look to is how all these pieces, they're going to fit all these pieces together once they start going into camp. They got they got a steal down there, Jamad McCoy, in the 4th round at corner, because he was taken off initially, Initially, he was looked at as a 1st round pick, but because he tore his knee up, he dropped. So 2024 going to 2025, barely played. But the Raiders, they're taking a chance on him, and they may have the steal of this draft, and we'll find out in years to come with that one pick, because no one else wanted this kid. No one else wanted to take that chance on him. And sometimes it's just a matter of you taking a chance to make a difference, not just in that kid's life, but in your team's life. Let me see the Cowboys. Let's see, because I know I got a lot of Cowboy fans that are listening, and I know the Cowboys graded out as a B. They picked up, wow, they really went heavy on defense. Matter of fact, out of their 7 picks, 5 of them were defense. So they saw where their deficiency was, and they went after it. So they went after to try to fix that situation that they had. Now, of course, my favorite pickup, and it wasn't draft day, it was the Saturday, which is an undrafted free agent, is Devin Dill. He's one of my Spartan babies. He started playing for us when he was 8, I believe, all the way up through his 13. And he was always a tremendous kid, tremendous player. But so now he is a Seattle Seahawk, which makes my daughter-in-law, Orita's, very happy, and makes my my nephew, who they're both Seahawk fans, makes them very happy. And I really pray he makes his team, and I believe he will. I believe he will go to Seattle and he will shock them, because he has a great work ethic, terrific work ethic, and he always did. Even as a little boy, he had a terrific work ethic. So I look forward to him going through and doing some great things up in Seattle. But overall, I thought the draft was really teams really got after it. This draft was probably stronger than a lot of people expected. There was no real drama. My wife's I would say Commanders, but it's Redskins in our house. So the Redskins graded out about a B, and they picked up some really good players. The running back from Penn State in the 6th round. So they did get a linebacker in the first round from Ohio State, Sonny Styles. So they did do a good job in filling, once again. Teams were trying to fill in those areas. If we look back, and I did talk about this before, if you go back to the free agency time period, I thought the Raiders did a tremendous job in free agency and really not just filling up those holes, but changing the whole atmosphere of the program during that free agency time period and headed towards the draft. So, and you see it because it's over my shoulders, so you know I'm going to talk about the Raiders more than everybody else. But I did want to, but because I have so many Eagle fans in my family also, and the biggest talk with the Eagles was, are they going to keep Mr. Brown, A.J. Brown, or not? But I'm saying no, he's out, especially since their first pick was Mekhi Lemon. Cocky dude, but he can ball from USC. So they grade out as a B+, but they picked out a wide receiver, tight end, offensive tackle, quarterback in the 5th round, guard, a safety, defensive tackle, and an edge rusher from New Mexico. But those first 2 picks, see where they're going at, and A.J. Brown's out. They're gonna move him out just as quickly as possible. Probably most likely to New England, since that's where they made some trades with initially, and that's where he really wants to go. But the NBA playoffs are heating up. The Pistons are in trouble. They're down 3-1. I don't see them coming back. I just think Orlando matches up too well with them, and they're more energetic. So they're really getting after it. So I don't see. I think the Pistons are going to be that 1 seed that falls to an 8, which we very rarely see. But I really believe that's going to happen. The Celtics just dismantling. I mean, they didn't beat my boys. It's 3-1, and 2 of those games were by 30+ points or close to it. Sixers flag. We just go hold on to it to next year. And yeah, they got abused. They abused my boys. They definitely. The Sixers are just so snake bitten when it comes to injuries and Joel Embiid. And I'm going to say this. I'm a Sixers fan. They need to drop that dude. They spend more time talking about him being injured than talking about him on the court. It's time to let him go. Build around Maxey. Keep building up around him. Draft big. Athletically big. And I would trade Joel Embiid. That'd be one of the first things I do as a Sixers is get rid of Joel Embiid and then move on from there and build other places. The Knicks and Hawks, wow, this terrific series. That could go either way. I still think the Knicks will find a way to win it. But that part, you get the Cavs and Raptors there headed because the Cavaliers had a chance to put the Raptors away. They let them hang around. So there's a dogfight in that area. But right now, the top half of that bracket, you got Cavs, Raptors, and Pistons and Orlando. So up top there, you very well are going to you could get the Raptors versus the Magic to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. And the Knicks are down there, and Hawks are down there with the Celtics, and nobody's beating the Celtics. They're going to go to the NBA Finals. They're not going to win it, but they're going to the NBA Finals. Nobody in the East beating them. I don't see anybody in the East beating those cats. Out West, OKC is headed for a sweep with they're balling. OKC swept, got a sweep. I'm sorry. The Lakers, they're in charge. They need to end the series tonight in LA. I'm saying tonight. You're going to see this on Wednesday, but they needed to end it on Tuesday. So I don't have the results back from that yet because they haven't played it yet. I do know they don't want to go back to Houston again for game 6. They need to finish it off tonight in game 5. T-Wolves, you know what? I had them in charge at 3-1, but those injuries showed out. The injuries showed, the 2 big injuries that they had, it showed last game. It really did. It really showed itself in such a manner that they could not. I don't see how they come back from those injuries, because they lost some really, really good players. Last night they lost by 12, and I just don't, it's 3-1. Now granted, they're up 3-2, but it's still, I don't, Reed Bank twisted his ankle up last night, just to add to their injury situation. So Naz Reid, so you're losing players, and that injury bugs really biting them at the wrong time. They lost DiVincenzo, blew out his right Achilles, no contact injury, as well as Anthony Edwards, and they lost him definitely for this series, and it had to be into the next one, deep into the next one before he would even come back. So I think that Denver, I think, is going to make that run back to it, and the Spurs are in charge, and they should be finishing off that series hopefully tonight. NHL playoffs, just real quick. Avalanche have already advanced. Stars and Wild are in a dogfight. Looking for this one to go 7. Mammoth and Knights. That's another hard hitting series that's going on, and I know that they went into overtime, and it was a crucial game that was very important, but my Flyers keep letting the Penguins hang around. Now it's 3-2, and that's not what you want to do. You want to get series over it. Now they're going into Wednesday night, and they have to kick, scream, and holler. I was not thrilled with that at all. At all. Not even a little bit. So I was like, wow. But the Golden Knights and Mammoth are tied at 2-2. So that should be another knockdown drag out. But to close out on something that's important to me, my Phillies. I hope Don Mattingly can make it happen as a manager, because they just got rid of Rob Thompson. So hopefully he can step up and they start hitting. You got to hit to win. You can't sit around and do nothing and think you're going to win. But once again, I will be headed to Utah, and I'll hopefully have some interviews for you from Utah. I'm headed for a national girls volleyball tournament. So I'll be in Utah all weekend. They start playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, up through Sunday. We fly back Monday. So I'm going to try to get around and interview, just real quick interview. Let them, hey, this is Boom. And let's see if we can get some of these young ladies to talk to us and answer some of our questions. And they won't mind being on camera. Of course, I always talk to the coaches and parents first. So, but with that, you guys pray for us as we fly to Utah and then fly back. We already know we're covered in the blood of Jesus. So we already know. So we're going to have a great time. But enjoy, once again, this time period with you. And folks, to really close out, you tell I'm a preacher because I said it more than once. You don't have to agree with somebody. You don't have to like everything somebody said. But let's stop speaking death to one another and our nation. And once again, I don't care what your race, creed, color, ethnicity is. I don't care what you believe spiritually. We're a nation. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That liberty that does not mean you can speak death to one another. Let's speak life and do like Jesus. Because he came for us to have life in it more abundantly. So I speak life to you. I speak life to your finances. And I speak life to great things happening for you. In Jesus' name, this your boy, Bill Smith. God, politics, and sports. Speak life. Hey. New season. Words of power. See you later. Thank you for joining me for God, Politics, and Sports. Stay engaged, stay encouraged, and I look forward to speaking to you once again on God, Politics, and Sports.